Good afternoon, Tim. How the heck are you?
Howdy, partners. Doing all right. How about yourselves?
We are doing great. Much better than this basketball team, man. Do you think there's any chance they pull out of this in the remaining 7 games?
Well, the NBA league office certainly seems to have some hope for them and wanted to give them a little bit of a little favor there. We're sending the technical foul on Luca. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they are just dead and buried, but they've put themselves in a situation where they're in deep trouble. Obviously, a game out of the play-in. They do have a tiebreaker over the Lakers, not over the Oklahoma City Thunder. But forget tiebreakers, and they're playing like hot garbage. I mean, this is maybe the most embarrassing weekend in franchise history that they're coming off of. To lose a home and home against the Charlotte Hornets, who were missing 3 starters and had absolutely nothing to play for except for the Dennis Smith Jr. revenge tour. I mean, it is a total embarrassment. This is a team that's been mediocre all season long, and worse than that, since they made the massive risk win now trade to go get Kyrie Irving. So, maybe they'll wake up, but if they were going to wake up, you would have thought that might happen somewhere between Dallas and Charlotte. And, after Jason Kidd called them out for playing like dogs, they played even worse in the first quarter to start that one. So I don't know what to tell you.
Tim, I always follow along. I think you're one of the best that covers this game. And I was wondering, as you're going along with this team, is Kyrie, he's not the problem in this, is he? I mean, it's not a locker room problem or him being a problem. Just following along with you, it sounds like you think that everything about him has been, above board and been good for the Mavs.
Yeah, listen, if you're looking at this and saying, hey, here's Kyrie blowing up another team, that's not based on what's actually happened in Dallas. We all know Kyrie's track record, and I'm not going to sit here and promise you that if they end up re-signing him to a long-term deal, there won't be stuff down the road. I can't guarantee that. But what I can tell you is this has not been a case of Kyrie coming in and creating chaos and him being the distraction. That hasn't happened. He's come in. He's been a pro. Unfortunately, he's had a foot injury. He's dealt with that. He did not shoot the ball well this weekend. That's obvious. If you want to criticize the performance against the Hornets by him, that's fine. But look, this team's if you're listing this team's problems, we're going to flip the page before we get to Kyrie Irving. Getting the whole Kyrie trade was a desperate move. It was a desperate measure to try to drag this team out of mediocrity. It didn't work. It probably made their problems worse because a bad defensive team has been worse since dealing Dorian Finney-Smith. But it is extremely lazy and unfair to say, they got Kyrie, and then this whole thing fell apart. It's his fault. That's not based on reality.
Is Jason Kidd the problem right now?
He's not. He hadn't been the solution, and I've got to tell you, it's pretty concerning to have him call a team out like he did Friday night, and you saw the response to start the game on Sunday afternoon. So, I think J. Kidd's got to own some of it. And the one thing I will say is he's had some pretty strong words in post-game press conferences. They've been more about calling people out than taking accountability. I don't believe I'm the only person who has noticed that. Mm-hmm. I think that's been an issue. And look, every coach, you're going to be able to find things that you can criticize in terms of rotations, in terms of, timeout usage. There's been plenty of that. No question about that. And also, J-Kidd's got a loud voice in personnel. JaVale McGee's not on this roster and wasn't promised a starting job without Jason Kidd, who had him in Los Angeles when he was on that Lakers staff, wanting him here. That thing has blown up in the Mavericks' faces. This is a terrible rim protection rebounding team that the guy they brought in to protect the rim and rebound is basically DNP CD every single game at this point. So that thing's really blown up in their face. And then J.K. was pounding the table for the Kyrie trade. And after the trade's made, he talks about this gives us a chance to compete for a championship. But clearly that hasn't happened. So he is not without blame. And now, nobody is solely at fault, but J. Kidd is not without blame.
Does Kidd and Nico see eye to eye on the type of players that they want, or is there a disconnect?
I think disconnect would be a little bit strong there. I think it's pretty clear that J. Kidd didn't necessarily see eye to eye on bringing Christian Wood to Dallas. But look, those guys, they have a relationship that goes back years and years and years to, back to J. Kidd's playing days. I don't think the problem is the GM coach relationship. I think, the bigger problem is the roster that they've put together, and then part of that's the roster they inherited. And then, part of that is we can't talk about the Mavericks without going back to the fact that they absolutely bungled the Jalen Brunson situation. Losing Jalen Brunson for nothing might be a bigger blow to this franchise than losing Steve Nash for nothing was. Certainly the recovery from Steve Nash was a lot smoother, right? They have not only have they not recovered from losing Jalen Brunson, but they've gotten worse trying to do that. And essentially, this is a team that has lost its second, third, and fourth best players from a West Finals team last year, plus an unprotected 2029 pick that really handcuffs what they can do going forward, to bring in Kyrie Irving with the hope that he'll be around next year. That's really rough roster management. And, if you can blame Nico Harrison, but I think you've got to go above him if you really want to get to, where the buck stops.
It's NBA insider Tim MacMahon here with us on 105.3 The Fan. Could you buy an explanation that they're kind of stuck in the middle of a rebuild right now, or is that not a reasonable explanation to you?
You think Luka Doncic is going to buy that explanation? Who gives a crap if I buy it? The answer is no, I don't. But listen, when you have a superstar of Luka's caliber, and by the way, he ain't without fault either. We can get into that. But when you have a superstar of his caliber, you have to try to keep that guy happy and keep him believing that a championship is within reach, or then you might not have that superstar that much longer. And he just started, you can call it a 5-year deal. It's not a 5-year deal. The player option in the 5th year is not getting picked up. Breaking news. I'll break that story right now. It's a 4-year deal. He's in the first year of it. Well, look around the league. You don't want to get 2 years out, and really you don't even want to go into this summer with him feeling like that he can't seriously pursue a championship in Dallas. That's always been kind of the lingering threat is, hey, we've got to keep Luka happy. That's a big reason why the Kyrie Irving trade was made, and he ain't happy right now. I think that's awfully clear.
What's all bothering Luka?
I mean, first of all, mediocrity was bothering him, and now they've been worse than mediocre. I think it's very clear that he's frustrated with the lack of winning. I think that's where things start first and foremost. I'll say J. Kidd has called him out on multiple occasions over the last couple of years. These last couple times, I didn't sense that he was buying in as much as he had before. And then I think Luka made it, he was pretty transparent, saying there's some things going on in his private life. I believe him, and I think that he's well within his rights to keep that stuff private.
Tim, just prying a little bit, and I don't know, is it the whole thing with his mom and this trademarking thing and things like that? The last thing I'm doing is going to speculate on Luka's I got you. I'm sorry.
There's
that was
zero
unfair.
Upside situation for me, and it's not. I don't think it's fair to him either.
Yeah.
Has it gotten toxic at all amongst any parties, or are they still on the same page?
What parties are we talking about?
The players to player and players to coaches.
I have not heard of anything being. I have not heard of toxic. I don't think. I'll put it like this. I don't think this is anything like Rick's last year here, where clearly that had become a toxic situation. But I mean, you don't need inside sources. All you need is a TV. This team's not connected right now. This team, the immaculate vibes, to borrow Jalen Brunson's term, they're not here. You can just see it in the lack of energy that these guys are playing with right now. And honestly, when Luka's frustrated, he's going to take it out on refs a lot, right?
Right.
And that's a problem for a few reasons. Number one, he's going to put himself in a situation where he has to get a break from the league not to be suspended. Number two, he gets so caught up in going after refs that it takes away from his focus, right? We saw that when they blew the 27-point lead, and Jay Kidd, without calling him out individually, basically called him out individually and was 100% on the money there. And then number three, I had a scout tell me that Luka is the worst transition defender that he's ever seen. He said in the history of basketball. Maybe that's hyperbole, but it's hard for me to argue against it because how often is he arguing with the refs and the other 9 guys on the floor are running down the floor and suddenly it's a 5-on-4 situation on the other end. Oh, hey, there's a layup or a wide open 3 because Luka didn't cross half court. So, this is something that's been an issue throughout his career and really over these the last month or two, I feel like it's as bad as it's ever been.
Well, when it comes to acquiring talent around Luka and for the reasons you just gave, are there players you think that don't like or want to play with him?
I would say that certainly Luka is not for everybody, right? And it's not a personality thing necessarily. It's just he's going to be one of the most ball-dominant players in the NBA. And, even last year, Jalen Brunson talked to me about how when you play with Luka, you essentially have to take your ego, put it in a box, and forget about it. Like, it's going to revolve around him, and you're going to have to figure out how to play off of him. Now, Luka, with Kyrie coming in, certainly he's never played with a guy who's that established of a superstar type of talent. So Luka has had to adapt a little bit. The other thing is these guys have only played 11 games together. Now, they've only won 3 of those, but we haven't really seen how much he would adapt because it's such a small sample size. But, yeah, his playing style, I think that is challenging as far as making this an attractive place for guys to play. But you know what? James Harden's playing style in Houston was awfully similar. And say what you want about how these partnerships worked out, but there were a list of stars who lined up wanting to play with James Harden. Now, the other thing is Luka's not on the Team USA bus, right? He didn't play AAU with a bunch of these guys growing up. He doesn't have those kind of relationships, and to this point in his career, he has not shown a desire to be a recruiter. Maybe that changes. He hadn't shown a desire to be involved in front office discussions until this year, and that certainly did change.
ESPN's Tim MacMahon hanging out with us here in the GBag Nation, talking all things Mavs. Do you buy the report about the Lakers having no interest in Kyrie at this point?
I will believe the Lakers don't have interest in Kyrie Irving when I see it. I think LeBron has made it awfully clear that he wants to play with Kyrie again, to the point where All-Star Weekend was kind of LeBron recruiting Kyrie, or LeBron loving him up as much as possible. So we'll see how things play out, but I think it would be a pretty big assumption to think that, hey, go ahead, cross the Lakers off the list of potential suitors.
The Mavs are totally undeterred by that 3-8 record and all this losing. Their number one and beyond plan is Luka and Kyrie together.
Well, here's the thing. What are the other options, right? And when they made the trade, the fallback plan was cap space. Okay, first of all, it's not max cap space. It would be somewhere in the 20+ million range. So they'd have to do some pretty major tinkering to create a max slot. Number two, who are they using that on? Right? Like, I mean, Fred VanVleet, Chris Middleton, and the Mavericks history, but forget the Mavericks history in free agency. Like, who's the player in free agency that's going to really move the needle for the Mavericks? Honestly, I think the best case scenario would be somehow they're able to use his Kyrie's bird rights in the sign and trade deal to get a star back. I also think that's by far the least likely scenario, simply because so many planets have to line up for a situation like that to happen.
Tim, if would you, as a Mavs fan, not you, but should Mavs fans just think, let's play to get get in the lottery and try and build it that way or help it that way? I mean, if what should Mav fans be looking at here? Like trying to get into the playoffs, or hey, take your medicine, get somewhere in the lottery and try and rebuild this team that way?
Boy, I tell you, again, if your goal is keeping Luca happy and not having him doubt whether he can have the kind of long-term success here that he expects to have, and a trip to the lottery does not seem like a real good idea unless you get really lucky and whatever it is, your 3% odds turn into to victor. But do I sit if they get the 10th pick, and that's the thing, the pick's top 10 protected, which number one right now they have the 10th best lottery odds, which is a total disaster to be clear. But the number 10 pick in the draft is not turning this thing around on the timetable that you need it to happen. I'll say that. And the other thing is, if they do keep their pick, it also further handcuffs their flexibility moving forward, right?
Right.
Because that pick is top 10 protected now, and then next year and the year after that, right? So 23, 24, 25, that means you can't trade 24 or 25. You've already traded 29. You can't have, in back-to-back years, you can't have your draft picks traded. So essentially what I'm telling you is, if they have a lottery pick, they can trade that pick technically after they make it on draft night or whatever. But once the draft is done and they're moving forward, they would have one pick to play with, one pick to put in the deals moving forward going into the next year. And that's, they're already kind of handcuffed, and that's really restrictive.
Tremendous job once again, Tim. We can't thank you enough for coming on with us, man.
All right. Appreciate it, fellas.